and welcome to another session of Application Development Today. My name is Don Jackson. I'm your host of Application Development Day. I am also the Chief Technologist here at OpenText. And today's topic is proving your net zero achievement. What does that mean? Who knows? Let's find out. I am pleased to have with me today Mr. Alan Wendt, who's a coworker of mine. He's actually one of those few people that have crossed over from coworker to almost friend at this point, if I dare say friend. He and I have known each other since I started here in 2015. Poor guys have to deal with me since then. Alan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Fantastic, Don. Thank you so much for the opportunity to sit with you. You bring a legacy of interesting tidbits in this series. I'm excited that I was invited to participate. Alan Wendt. I am physically located in the state of Texas. I grew up in the Midwest, very much like our friend Don was also from the Midwest. I am a solution architect for OpenText, and I specialize in our portfolio and strategy segments of the portfolio. So I have responsibility for a couple of specific applications, but anywhere they touch the strategy, the project management, some of those active adjectives, you'll find my face. So it's great to be here. I've been with OpenText and its legacies for over 15 years. I just celebrated that this several months ago.
Congratulations.
5 or 6 months ago. Thank you. And nowadays that's actually quite a feat to be around more than just a few years at a particular company. But it's fantastic to still be here, still to see your face. And we have the opportunity to continue engaging not only with exciting technology, but also exciting people that we get to see shining faces on a regular basis. So thanks for having me, Don.
Yep, and I see in the background you've got the OpenText YouTube channel up there. So I don't know if that's a shout out to try to get people to go out to the OpenText YouTube channel.
I was going to say, anytime I'm ready, if you want me to just start up the engine back there, it's ready to go.
We'll have a YouTube playing a different YouTube. That'd be interesting.
Wouldn't that be? It would have that mirror effect where you'd see 5,000 of the same things going into the future. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Just say the word. Happy to fire it up.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time today, Alan. I always appreciate our conversations. And let's just jump into this. So when we say net zero, what is net zero? What does that mean?
Well, it is a subsection of a larger acronym that we'll get into in a minute. But the net zero is really about emissions and how the kind of gases, the kind of toxins, the kind of negative things that you're putting in the environment and how you measure those and how you control those in your supply chain. So net zero would be the ability of operating your business without putting negative waste into the environment and into your social situation. So you put as much into the environment and into your systems of record that you're pulling out of. And so net zero would be where those things literally have a zero. In the industry, they call that a zero footprint. So your footprint would be zero.
So we
putting in at just as much as you're getting out.
Yeah, so we hear a lot in the industry, of companies have goals to achieve net zero or have been carbon neutral, right?
There you go.
Another word for it. In fact, if you go to the Google site, the main Google page, I think it says carbon neutral since like 2007 or something like that, which is fantastic, when you think about that. So you mentioned about this other acronym. So what's this other acronym and what does it mean? Don't forget DYA.
I couldn't forget DYA. So, in preparation for today, I did my homework, I did a little research, and so I've absolutely seen how the team, the crew behind that supports you behind the scenes is very careful about making sure our audience knows what we're talking about. So let's demystify it. The other acronym that you are talking about is this big ESG. ESG stands for Environment, Social, and Governance, ESG. And so don't kill me, but it is a very touchy political topic. which is interesting. I say don't kill me, because if you Google ESG just on sites like the YouTube channel, you'll find a lot of material about how people are upset about being required to invest and to run their businesses a certain way. We're both Americans. We work for a global company, but there are a lot of people who don't like to be told what to do. Imagine that. So here is another category of operating where, and we have seen it. For goodness sake, the example I've been using in the last 6 months is here in February. As I said, I live in Texas. We had for 4 straight days a frozen tundra here in Texas, and our trees didn't fare very well. And so I have 3 trees on my property. 2 of them don't look the same. I mean, they're half of the canopy is gone. I mean, these trees all had leaves on them in February because our trees don't freeze. I mean, so there is something, and there is a wealth of knowledge, a wealth. I'm going to skirt the issue today and say the information is out there. I'm not going to represent it, but there is something going on in our environment, in our nature. There are trends of weather that have never happened historically, and one of those affected me personally. And so I now have a more personal engagement with what is going on, because I don't want my trees to fall over. I mean, there's quite an investment there, the aesthetics, the whatever they call it, from the looking at my father's selling a house, and he talks about how the frontage sells the house.
Yes.
It has to look well. My trees don't look so great. I mean, if I wanted to invest several $1,000s, I could ship in some new trees, but they looked great in January. But even with that said, we want to do a better job of corporate citizenship. And so being a better corporate citizen includes how we pull resources out of the environment, and then also how we inject resources in that same environment. A lot of things in ESG involved the environment. Yes. So you talk about things like planting trees and making sure your scope 1 and 2 and 3 emissions tracking and recording of how your supply chain is creating those negative impacts to the environment. And then at the same time, that's the E. The S is the social impact. So things like hiring with equality in mind, both the feminine male ratios and all the right adjectives, and also things like hiring according to race equality and balances and age and those types of things. And then the G, and there's other things related to social as well, obviously. That's an easy one. The G would be more governance. So how does the company communicate that? So we talk about visibility of reporting. Governance also includes like executive committees, how much executives are making. So communicating that kind of information and how executives are incentivized to perform better. And so communicating those types of things is one of the attributes of the governance. Another one too is there's a lot of companies that invest in the politics of our land. And so how we're investing, what companies we spend money on to lobby, for example, that would also be part of the governance. And communicating those things is really what this is about.
Okay, well, great. So with your background, you didn't mention what your background is, but I know your background, right? You're like the project management guy, right? The guy who's got all these multiple acronym certifications and whatnot. And before coming to what's now OpenText, you ran programs and ran projects. How do you get involved then in the ESG space?
Well, and you and I have had an opportunity to record previous events before. And so we get together, we talk about projects, we talk about process, we talk about strategy. And yes, I have a background. I work for one of the big three, big four, whatever one of those I worked for over 10 years. And I sort of have a legacy of the guy who supports the project team, the PMO office. PMO stands for Project Management Office, by the way.
Good job.
I'm not going to get stuck. I'm not going to get stuck. I assume you're making notes here, so let's get that one right. And there's another one, EPMO, Enterprise Project Management Office. Okay, so and I know you're going to catch me, but it's fun that I'm catching them myself. So how is that guy the one that's talking about the environment? And here's the situation: is there's a couple lines that have converged. And so you have the line of doing a better job of strategic project management, which, by the way, PPM, project and portfolio management, that acronym in the market space is kind of, it's been replaced, it's been vaporized. There's two, according to all of the analysts that we listen to. The market has changed because now it's strategic project management, SPM, and adaptive project management. And there's no acronym for that one. Imagine that. So
I don't understand
because
that.
We sit adaptive is more like collaborative task management. Making sure you get.
I'm sorry.
Things. Oh, you don't
in IT.
That we don't have an acronym.
That we don't have an acronym. I don't understand. I can't work with it.
Yeah,
if we don't have
cannot process. Yeah. I can't process that thought. Where's the acronym? I'm missing my acronym. But adaptive doesn't have one. We could come up with one. We were creating acronyms just last week for a VES, which is Value Edge. No, it's probably VES, Value Edge Strategy, which is another one of our products outside the scope of today's conversation.
So yes with VES. Yes.
Yeah. Or the hat that's a VES. It's or PES, whatever that. Yeah. So, onward and upward.
Dispensers, right?
But the lines that have converged are doing a better job of reporting strategically. Whoa, okay. Well, now all of a sudden, the space of environment has kind of moved into, we need to report these and have strategic decisions. And now it's part of something now that would come under the heading of strategic planning, strategic decisions, strategic management. That I'm the guy. That's the reason.
Okay, wonderful. So, what would you say is really the impact of ESG? Is it an impact just based on your that publication of what goes out into the public about your company, or is there other impacts that you have in there? And then you talked about tracking it. How do you track it? I know I'm peppering you with like two questions at once. It's not really fair, but that's okay.
How is that unusual?
Yeah. Oh, me. I have one question in 47 parts.
Well, and what I usually have to say is, which one would you like me to answer first? I mean, did you ask me in order of importance, or? But that's okay. It's important, and how it's done is, I think, kind of the questions that you're asking me. It's important because at some point soon, those things are going to be compliance related. So there are regulations that are being developed, and it's interesting. America has a tendency in this category to trail the rest of the globe. Other countries, as you can imagine, are a lot more sensitive to what's going on with the environment. Okay, again, politics. We're not going to go there.
But please don't.
But Americans, and North America specifically, has trailed a bit. And so there are other countries, regions of the globe that are a lot more interested in staying ahead of how the environment is impacting, or how we are impacting as companies and individuals the environment. And so they've started doing this out of choice, not out of requirement. Now, certain companies, not the United States first, strangely enough, we've already talked about, but they are starting to require companies to do this public reporting. And as the area and the area of topic has matured, we now have regulating bodies of agencies that are, there's a rating that you can get, so many stars or a letter behind the company name that designates how much care and diligence you're taking to actually do a good job of this ESG reporting. So that was the why it's important. How is it done? Of course, a lot of these companies are already having to track these kinds of metrics for environmental protection reasons. And so if you operate in certain states and certain regions, you have to collect things like what kind of outgassing are we putting out into the environment? How many trees have we cleared to build our operations? How much power are we consuming to keep our data center up and running? How many computers does it take, and what's the heat those things put off? Now, and again, I'm only an expert.
How many engineers does it take to change a light bulb?
4. I'm not. Don't do the punchline of that joke. But the answer is 4, no matter what the question is. But that's why, and that's how they're reporting. So all of that data. Now they're developing a whole area of centers of excellence and whole areas of solutions of record that they're storing that information. So large platform systems, like some of our partners in the SAP world, in the database area, in our Vertica area, where you have to track and trend lots of data, those solutions traditionally, but then now you have these masks of solutions with really slick GUI UIs that do scorecarding and dashboard reporting and executive reporting. Did I say any acronyms there? I don't think so. That are doing a much better job. So again, as the area of focus is maturing, the solutions around them that support them are maturing. So in our space, we now have said, well, you have a need to track executive KPIs. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. And so those KPIs need to be tracked somewhere. So let us create that system of record for you and associates the pipeline, the work that you're doing, or the work that you've already done that you're supporting, and then how you continue to invest and manage those areas related to several different factoids, including the environmental, social, and governance categories.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned about different regional areas. So I heard about one of our customers in Europe that is measuring for their mobile application, what's the digital footprint that it consumes on a mobile device. So on my phone, right? On my phone, how much processor, how much memory is it, and what's its effect on the heat of that? Because that has environmental impact to it, especially when you factor in, potentially hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of users utilizing your application. Well, okay, so if it has a higher footprint and requires more processing power, then it drains the battery faster. It heats up as well, so that heats things up, and then it requires more power to charge it later, which is consuming more. So that's actually an environmental impact that you have. Whereas if you are able to reduce that, you can start measuring what that impact is, and you'd have KPIs, key performance indicators, that would be impacted by that. So it's really an interesting way to think about application development, because that's our focus, right, is application development today. How can our application development impact the environment? And most people don't think about that, right? They don't. I mean, I never thought about that until probably a few months ago when I was, I would write some really complex code. So you start thinking about how you write code, right? So I can write one huge string of code that is incredibly complex for me to read and write. Or I can break that into like 15 sequential lines of code that is much easier for me to read and much easier for me to write, but because it's sequential instead of being one line of code, it's actually utilizing more processing time, more CPU cycles, because it's got to move through that code. And that also depends on whether or not you're talking about a compiled language or a non-compiled language as well. So there's a lot of factors that you can get into this to start thinking about how I'm writing my code to be more environmentally friendly. Not just am I writing good code, because that's something we've all struggled with before in the past, right? But not only is it functionally correct, not only does it perform well, but what is the environmental impact for it as well? How much CPU cycle is it taking? How much memory is it taking? It's a new way to look at things, and I think we're probably in the forefront of where we're going to see that going in the future. I think that in the future, we're going to start having more and more metrics that we're tracking around this impact, right? If we can, especially the large enterprises where you've got tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of users that are using this, that then, yeah, okay, so it has an impact of 1 kilowatt hour per day per user. Okay, that's a lot. Then if I factor in 100,000 users, that's 100,000 kilowatt hours per day.
Yeah, and some of the metrics that, because we have a whole corporate citizenship in a team at OpenText that's located up in the Waterloo headquarters. And I think it's a team of 8 or 10 professionals that this topic is one of their primary responsibilities, and staying on top of that. And they do an annual report. You can find that online, and maybe we could provide that link somewhere at the end of today's session, just as a reference. But that corporate citizenship report includes a tonnage, and so there's those 3 scopes of the emissions, which is direct, indirect, and other. There's these 3 measurement points that are very common in the industry. But then there's this unit of tonnage, and it's tonnage of, it's a weight about the waste that's introduced as a result of the way we operate across the business. And some of those tonnage rates and how they're improving or inclining or declining, because it's a variable scale based on operations, based on how much we produce, based on our customer usage. Those things are going to go up and down, based on how we operate the business. And we actually have 2 major milestones at OpenText: 50% net zero by 2030, and 100% compliant, net zero by 2040. So it's a very aggressive timeline. If you compare that with a lot of our competitors, it's not even close to that. 2050, 2060. I mean, they're really kind of just putting a bullet out there in the future of like, whenever that lands. There was some software I used to support that the end date for some of the licensures was like the year 2999. Well, that's easy, right? Like, well past when I'm even going to be around. So that's whoever in the future kick the can down the street. Somebody else's responsibility. Yeah, 2060. Really? How are you going to influence that? But there's a lot of professionals that we work with today that are going to be around in 2030, 2040 easily. So they're halfway there.
So in preparing for this session, so I do research as well, right? For stuff like this. There was a topic that came up about KPIs, and then they also had another acronym out there called OKR. What is OKR, and how does that differ from KPI?
So we've already talked about KPI. Let's do the simple, low-hanging fruit. Key performance indicators are that tracking. We want to reduce our footprint in carbon. We want to do a better job of hiring with equality in mind. So we track how many people and their ethnicity, or we track how many tonnage of carbon. The KPI is the exercise of making a target, and actually the key performance indicator, making a target, tracking the target, and then having lineage information depending on the frequency that you track that information. So that's sort of the KPI space, is, creating decent, interesting looking reports and tracking that information. Now, an OKR, objects and key results, that is a framework. And so instead of talking about the mathematics of it and the reporting aspects, key reporting with KPR. Key reporting. I had a brain fart.
Okay.
OKR. Objectives and key results. Holy moly. And you would think I had that printed somewhere. It's just up in the head. That's what's throwing me off. I keep looking at my picture, Don, and it's throwing me off. I'm looking at that and I'm like, it's not changed, which is just the thing. Brain fart. Moving on. OKRs, objectives and key results, is a framework. And so you can have KPIs, you can have other measurement points, but it's not necessarily just about the math. It's about the platform. It's about having those things, categories, aligning to strategic themes is part of an OKR. Having the KPIs is a subset of an OKR. So you can think about it that way. It's sort of the KPI, and then the OKR sort of sits on top of it. The KPI, the key performance indicator, is a measurement tracking component of an OKR, objectives and key results framework.
Okay, so it's I could have one to many KPIs that roll up into my OKR, and then I can track my OKR over time as well, right?
There's this dependency relationship. A key performance indicator is an aspect of an OKR framework. Yeah,
and potentially, correct me if I'm wrong, but potentially I could have one KPI could feed multiple OKRs as well. So it's a many-to-many relationship.
Yes, and you would have one sort of umbrella OKR, and one one KPI can feed multiple areas of that OKR. That's absolutely right.
Awesome.
The OKR is the umbrella. The KPI is sort of one of the many sisters and brothers in that framework.
Well, it's always interesting because this is like most of the conversations we have. This is a topic that is divergent from what we normally talk about, right? Areas that we normally talk about. And I think when you think about your environmental impact, we all can do things for that as well. Like, for example, changing out light bulbs, right? So I have these cool lights over here. They're LED. They use very little energy. I probably could just turn them off instead in the future. Maybe I will. Although they entertain me and keep me. you have the lighting on the keyboard. Yeah. So, but making sure that they're environmentally friendly, much more friendly than they have been in the past. Well, Alan, I thank you so much for taking the time today and educating us some. I know we could go a lot deeper. I don't want to, unless somebody has interest, I don't want to take too deep for them and potentially people who aren't interested tune out maybe. But do you have some parting thoughts, parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us before we wrap things up?
Well, again, the process project management guy has a responsibility on the fringe, right? I'm sort of on the perimeter, sort of staying around, making sure, I'm not the intrusive project manager who's always over here. There was a scene that we were looking at, and maybe we can put a link in there, but it's this fish on top of this diver, and the diver's working, but the fish keeps sticking his face in to what the diver's working on, where it has a title, development, engineer, project manager. It's just like, I have work to do. Get out of my way, right? And a lot of people see the project manager and the process space as intrusive. We're here to help. We're here to make you look better. We're here to, we talk about football analogies, but be the blockers, the linebackers, if you will, in front of you to sort of stave off a lot of the attackers that may impede your performance. And so you can see I like to see the project manager as in front of you, ahead of you, staying ahead of you and defending against all the chaos, the noise that's coming at you. Of course, some of the developers don't see it that way, but that's just a different of opinion. And so
I think you can have that goes to good project managers versus bad project managers, right? We've all had that one project manager that just hangs over your shoulder and what are you doing now? What are you doing now?
Yeah. What can I tell them you're done? Can I tell them you're done?
That's what I'm doing, right? I'm not actually doing work. I'm just answering your questions. Can you go away?
Well, a lot of people see tracking time as the same way. Like, do you want me to spend my time developing or tracking time? I mean, like, that has a tendency also to be like, the only thing I do with project software is track my silly time. It's not the only thing we do with that.
I mean, if only there was a solution out there that allowed you to take, when you worked on a user story and you put in how much time you worked on that user story, if only there was a solution out there that could then drive it into a timesheet. I mean,
imagine that. Right? we have something for you.
As you guys know, right? I talk about Shift everywhere, right? Self plug. This is another self plug. I gotta admit, I'm shamelessly self plug.
Well, we have a solution to help you with that.
There.
And that's where I was going with my parting thoughts too, Don, is that we have a strategic management solution to help companies, and we're going to be presenting that in just a matter of days at a conference. And so we have the team from OpenText is actually joining us for a conversation with our customers about this topic. And we're going to be showing our strategic management platform, as a way to digitize your journey to net zero. And it is a journey. It's not a, it's not a patch. It's not a Band-Aid. It's not a quick answer. It's the entry ramp into starting to do things, report things differently. And so we have a solution for that. And just like you said with the time tracking, imagine a solution that takes your user stories from whatever tool of record that you're doing and then captures that and creates a timesheet. We can do that. So, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It was a joy talking with you. I hope we didn't kill your team behind the scenes with too many acronyms and all the graphics. I look forward to interacting with the folks that we have coming up and the next opportunity you have for us, the next topic. So thanks very much, Don, and everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Alan. And as Alan talked about, so tune in for our next session. We're going to be talking about testing away your risks. So first you have to identify your risks, and then how do you mitigate those risks? I look forward to that. And once again, Alan, thanks for taking the time. I always enjoy our conversations, and we can all be more environmentally friendly, I think. Just look in your daily lives. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
If you liked the video, please click the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you get notified when we release new videos.